I'm going to give you a new understanding of chapter 2 of Genesis. Is that all right? We're going to be in the world you don't know. Because what we're going to talk about now is, as a leader, you need to understand why people do what they do. Behavior doesn't happen in a vacuum. Everything humans do is motivated by something, all right? So, this is kind of my core teaching on marriage, but actually it's not about marriage. It's about relationship. Now, I want you to think about it. If you could have paradise, however you want paradise, however you want it. You could have the house that you want. You could have it wherever you'd want. You had all the stuff that you would want, right? You could do whatever you wanted. Maybe you have a log cabin. Maybe you have a house on the ocean somewhere. I don't know. You just dream about your paradise for a minute. Would your paradise have taxes in it, by the way? No. It would be paradise, right? Would it have roaches? No. Mosquitoes? Gnats? No. It wouldn't be paradise, would it? You could have the temperature you always want. It'd be a perfect place, right? All pleasure. Now think about it this way. If you could live in that and you could be in charge of it all, would you take it? Yeah. If you don't be in charge of it, that's okay. I'll come knock down your house and build my house. Well, in that moment, it wouldn't be your paradise anymore, would it? So you'd want to be able to manage it, right? If you could live in that, you would manage your paradise, and God would be in your paradise with you. Would you take it? Yes. Sounds pretty good so far. If you could be in that environment, you would manage it, God would be with you. But here's the kicker now. No one else is allowed with you. No family, no kids, no spouse, no friends. But the neat thing is, you get all of that great stuff. You can do whatever you want in the environment you want to live in. You can share it with God. You just can't share with anybody else. Would you take it? What's wrong with you all spiritually? You wouldn't take it, why not? You have God. He's not enough?
Yes, he's enough.
I don't know. You're asking me a question? What do you think? Yes. Good. For those of you who said no, the answer is supposed to be no. You were never meant to take it. This was the dilemma of Adam in Genesis 2:18. Adam was in paradise. He lived in a perfect environment. He had an exalted position. He's at the top of the food chain, right? Yeah. And he manages everything. And he is not alone. Who's he with? Eve. No, pre-Eve. Oh. He's with God. Okay. He's with God. Now, if you read Dr. Michael Heiser's book, who's a Hebrew language scholar, he always deals with the Old Testament passages that nobody wants to talk about. But he does them matter of factly and forthright. It's an interesting read. A little over my head, so I have to huh? But he points out in the Hebrew language, on the actual authors make it clear that God was in the garden in human form. Adam actually walked with God in human form in the early days. He quit showing up in human form right before the Tower of Babel. He did not come back in human form until the person of who? Jesus. So they make it clear that he actually walked with God in the garden in human form. Now, this is what God says of Adam in that condition. It is not good that the man should be what did God mean? Because if you think about it, Adam wasn't alone. He was with God. He's in a perfect environment. And he's not alone. He's with God in the garden. And yet, God said he was alone. But he's not alone because he's with God. But God said he was alone. So he has to be alone because God said he's alone. But in reality, he's not alone. So what did God mean? Adam doesn't know what it means. He knows he's alone. He didn't know he's alone until God said he was alone. Many people have used this verse, quoting what you just said there. It's Lauren, right? Lauren just made a reference to, I'll make it help me. People have now interpreted that verse about marriage. This verse has nothing to do with marriage. Writers are now re-understanding this verse in light of what we now know about God's design of humans. You see, Adam knows he's alone, but he doesn't know what it means because he's not alone. He's actually with God. So God gives him an assignment. Verses 19 and 20. Name the animals. So God brings the animals for Adam to name. And as Adam's going through the process of naming the animals, Adam comes to a realization, an awareness, that there's not another one what? Like him. That's what it says. In the moment that Adam realized there was not another one like him, what do you think he felt? Alone. The reason we know this has nothing to do with marriage is because you can be alone, you can be married and very much alone. And you can be single and not alone. This verse is making it clear that God did not create us to need him only. If you don't like that, take that up with him. He's a creator. He intentionally made us to need him and others. We now know through brain research that particularly with kids who've unbonded, unattached, there's a whole field of mental health now on called unattached children, foster kids, severe cases of no bonding. Research on their brain shows the prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, doesn't develop well. The worst case I ever saw was in a documentary. Back in the 70s, 80s, when Ceausescu was leader of Romania, he shut down contraception, and they had all these kids being born. But if the kid had a defect or you didn't want it, these kids were put into orphanages. And then when he died and that government fell, Americans went over there and had started adopting all these kids and brought them back. These kids had severe psychological disturbances. Severe. And I'm watching this documentary about it, and there's this reporter with the microphone talking to this doctor. The nurse is holding this kid about this long in her arms, right? And she's holding this kid, and they're asking about this kid, how he got there, and that kind of stuff. And the nurse is answering the question. And then the nurse is asked this question by the reporter, well, how long has he been here? And she said, 18 years.
Oh my gosh.
That's what I thought. Well, 18 years? And the reporter said, why is he so short? Doctor's answer, as an infant, he never attached. And because he never emotionally attached to anyone, his brain did not fully develop, and his brain did not release growth hormones. That's what no bonding, no attachment, no intimacy can actually do in severe cases. It affects human development. The leading health crisis in America, it is an epidemic problem. It is so bad that insurance companies now want it fixed. And 10 years ago, they paid Tivity Healthcare out of Nashville, Tennessee, a $1 billion healthcare platform, to fix this problem. And the reason the health insurance companies want it fixed is because this issue causes them to spend a lot of money. Because this issue increases heart disease, strokes, heart attacks, irritable bowel syndrome, ulcers. It creates depression, it creates anxiety disorders, and it leads people into addictions. And insurance companies pay for the effects of all that. So what is it that we want fixed? It's loneliness. It's loneliness. The leading health crisis in America is loneliness. Americans are more lonely and detached than we've ever been. And by the way, this didn't do it. This exacerbated the problem. What created this problem was the breakdown of the family. People go to church alone and they walk out alone. We're not even fixing the loneliness problem. It's the insurance companies that want to fix it. But God said it's not good that man should be. That's how bad it is today. It's an epidemic problem. And the secular world wants it fixed. That's disturbing to me. This is our realm. Connection to God, self, and others, think great commandment. So Adam now knows he's alone because when he realizes there's not one like me, he actually feels the aloneness God was talking about. Have you ever felt alone before? I grew up that way. I always felt alone, isolated, disconnected. And I went into my adult life that way. No healthy attachments to anybody. I'm not proud of it. Here's what happened. I didn't know how to bond or attach. And I was afraid to. Because I learned don't. Because you get close to somebody, they're going to betray you. They're going to walk out of your life. That's what I learned about life as a kid growing up. So I held parts of my back from the well. I parts myself back from the well. Why? In case you leave me too. I know what it's like to be alone. Many kids today do as well. They don't even feel connected to their own parents today because the parents aren't even connected to each other. It is not good that man should be what? Alone. Now we can ask the question, why would God want Adam to feel the pain of aloneness in the garden before Eve? Why would you want Adam to feel the pain of aloneness in the garden before Eve? The simple answer is this. Because you never appreciate the good times until you had what? Some bad times. Adam had to feel the pain of aloneness to understand the value of the relationship he's about to get. Because if he'd not felt that pain of aloneness, he would not understand the value of the relationship with her. Because you don't go from perfect love to perfect love. It is what it is. He had to feel this to understand this. Make sense? And of course, Genesis 3 shows up. She eats of the fruit, and the moment she eats the fruit, he feels the aloneness again. Why? Because he felt the break in the relationship, and God felt the break. And here, if you're taking notes, write down this phrase. Pain pursues pleasure. Pain pursues pleasure. God designed the brain that whenever you experience any form of pain, be it relational pain or physical pain, your brain will avoid the pain and pursue pleasure. Because your brain is not meant for pain, it's meant for pleasure. And whenever you're in pain, you have a headache, what do? You take something. Why? Pain pursues pleasure. That's what you do. That's what the brain does. All right? We'll talk more about that in just a minute and give you greater meaning around it. Does that help? And so Adam now feels the pain and aloneness. And it is in human connection with God, self, and others. Great commandment, which are three relationships. Intimacy with God, intimacy with others, and intimacy with yourself. It is in intimacy with God, self, and others that we live the fulfillment of what God intended for us from the beginning. That make sense? So we have to bond and attach in healthy ways in all three areas. Of course, sin came in and kind of broke those relationships. So you can't bond and attach in healthy ways perfectly. But we can learn to bond and attach maturely. But to do that, I have to be healthy, because a husband who loves his wife loves who? Himself. And I'm glad that you said that, because that's what people think. It's not what Paul said. You can love God and not love yourself, and that will inhibit your ability to love your wife. Because the husband who loves his wife loves himself, Ephesians 5 says. In the degree that I didn't love myself, I couldn't love Luella well. So I had to learn to love myself well. Not in an arrogant, haughty way, but in a mature way. Make sense? Through humility. Now, since all humans are created needy, Americans don't like the fact that we're needy, do we? We got this John Wayne mentality, right? John Wayne and Jesus. Which one do you want to serve? Well, we serve the John Waynes, but Jesus and John Wayne don't match. They're very different. They're different realities of ways relating. John Wayne said, "Don't forgive. It's a sign of weakness." John Wayne was always tough and aloof. Jesus is mostly tender and nurturing. But we see tender, nurturing men, we think there's something wrong with them. And we actually socialize boys to not bond. We'll talk about that in just a minute. We socialize girls to bond, but we socialize boys not to bond in Western culture. You see? Because we like individualism. Be rough. Suck it up. Get over it. And so all humans are created needy. We have physical needs, food, air, water, shelter. You have emotional needs. You have intellectual needs. And you have spiritual needs. And all must be met and all will be met. And when your needs are met, you feel love. When your needs are not met, you don't feel love. It's real simple. So let's use an example. All right? Your name again is? David. So let's say David hadn't eaten in 5 days. That's a physical need, right? It's a physical need for appetite. If he hasn't eaten in 5 days and the physical need for appetite is not met, God designed the brain for his brain to send a signal, because all pain creates symptoms. He will have the symptoms of hunger, dehydration, cramping. What his brain is doing is sending a signal to the body. The need for appetite is not satisfied. We must satisfy this need. So let's say, David, I give you a bunch of hamburgers. The question is, would the hamburgers satisfy the unmet need for appetite? The answer is yes. Here's kind of the 1,000-foot view. The moment, David, the moment you take the first bite into a hamburger, that moment your brain goes, oh, you're eating something. And the brain releases automatically a neurochemical called dopamine. Say that with me. Dopamine. Remember, dopamine, it's a mood shift into pleasure. It's like your brain goes, oh, you're eating something. Dopamine release, you have a mood shift into pleasure. You finished all the hamburgers. You're no longer hungry. You moved out of pain into what? Pleasure. It'll work. But let's say I don't give you, hamburgers. Let's say I give you 4 boxes of rat poison to satisfy the unmet need for appetite. Here's the question. Would rat poison satisfy an unmet need for appetite? It would, David. You're absolutely right. Because the first bite into the rat poison, assuming you like the taste, your brain goes, oh, you're eating something. And the brain releases dopamine. Either way, the dopamine gets released. He has a mood shift into pleasure. He's no longer feeling pain. Finishes all the rat poison. You're no longer hungry. You moved out of pain into pleasure. Both will satisfy the need for appetite. Both will do it. You won't be hungry. The problem, though, with the rat poison is this. Though it will satisfy the need for appetite, the rat poison also creates more what?
Problems.
Pain. What does pain do?
Choose pleasure.
So what do? You go back to your source of pleasure and eat more rat poison. You go, why? Simple. Bad love is better than negative attention. Still better than what? No attention. You see that list right there on page 11? All humans are created with these needs. These needs must be met, and they will be met one way or another. These are all mentioned in Scripture. I just happen to notice here, I put the wrong one in here, but I have all the Bible verses for all of these. All of these are mentioned in Scripture. 1 Thessalonians 5:11, where it says we're to encourage one another. Mourn with those that mourn and rejoice with those that rejoice. Why? Because you're not meant to mourn with someone or rejoice with someone alone. And when someone's mourning, you mourn with them. That comforts them. And when these needs are met, I call them cares, and here's why. C, 5 A words, R, E, and 2 S words. I had to have a way for me to remember them, right? So I came up with the acronym CARES. So comfort means to soothe, console, reassure, respond to a hurting person with words, feelings, and touch. What I learned, and this is, I'm not saying I was healthy in my earlier days, but I remember when I was on staff at a church many years ago, a lady came up. She's going through a lot of pain and hurt, and she shared something going on in her marriage, and she had tears, and she's telling me about it, and she said, Dr. Mars, would you pray for me? I said, yes, ma'am, I will. And she went on. Now, I'm not proud of this, but I'm honest about who I was. And Spirit said to me, you just lied to her. You ain't going to pray for her. She needed comfort right then and there, and you didn't care. And you could have comforted her with a prayer, but you didn't care. There was a need right there in front of you, and you didn't care about it. And I made a decision right then and there. Whenever there's a need in front of me, to the best of my ability, I will meet it. I will meet it right then and there, because that's what Father expects of me. That person needs encouragement. Will you encourage them? They need support. Can we support them right now? They need security. Can you help them or speak words to them? In other words, all these needs must be met. Acceptance is favorable reception, receiving and loving another person willingly and unconditionally, especially when your behavior has been imperfect. We need affection, a tender feeling towards another. We need appreciation, which is an expression of gratitude. Appreciation is actually focused on what a person does. Approval is a blessing. It's like an affirmation of a person. That is about who you are. Appreciation is about what you do. Approval about who you are. We all need to know that we're approved. We all need to know that we're appreciated. The research around gratitude and appreciation on the brain is powerful. Matter of fact, whenever you share an appreciation with someone, the moment that person hears that appreciation, their brain releases dopamine. How many dopamine shots, if you're married, do you give your spouse every day? How many dopamine shots do you give your kids every day? If you're an employer, how many dopamine shots do you give your employees every day? If you're a church leader, how many appreciations do you give members? Got it? Our brains are wired for it, which now gives meaning to Proverbs 16:24. Pleasant words are pleasing to the physical body. Well, how can pleasant words be pleasing to the physical body? Brain research now tells us is dopamine. They just didn't have brain research technology back those days. But everything the Bible teaches is being proved by brain science today. It's fascinating to me. Just shows you how brilliant God is, right? And so give dopamine shots. We need attention. This is awareness, entering to another person's world. If I wanted my dad to notice me, I had to go into his world, which is basically bulldozers. But he would never come into my world. Because he didn't want to be in my world. I had to go to his world. God did not ask you to come to his world. He came to our world.
Praise the Lord.
To let us know, I think about you and I care about you. I'm noticing you. So much so, I've entered into your world. He gives attention. Someone hurting in front of you, are you noticing it? Have you ever been driving along or something happened? You get a phone call, someone goes, hey, I was just thinking of you. And you get this, wow. They actually meant attention. You just didn't know they could hear language for it. And you got a dopamine shot right in that moment. You see? We need respect. We need encouragement. 1 Thessalonians 5:11. We need security, well-founded confidence, relationship harmony, freedom from fear. And we need support. Galatians 6:2 says we're to bear one another's burdens. Support people. And all of these needs must be met, and they will be met. These are linked to the 59 one another's. The 59 one another's are the one another verses. Love one another, encourage one another, support one another, comfort one another. Why? Because you're not meant to live life alone. Behavior does not happen in a vacuum, my brothers and sisters. Everything you do is motivated by the pain of an unmet need. So here's how it works. Can we agree that all humans have a fallen nature?
Yes.
But I'm also arguing now that all humans are needy. All humans are needy. And when our needs are met, we feel love. When our needs are not met, we feel unloved. It's not rocket science, just that simple. It's the way God designed the brain to work, all right? Or Dr. Ferguson says it this way, love is experienced when needs are met. We experience love when our needs are met. But if your needs are not met, you won't feel loved, you'll feel unloved. It's not rocket science, it's pretty simple. Ladies, let me show you how it works. Nagging is a sin. Scripture says that a contentious woman is like a slow dripping faucet. Drip, drip, drip. So you're nagging. Why are you nagging? Because that's a part of your fallenness. It's a part of it's fallen behavior. So what does your husband do? Well, we complain about your nagging. Why do husbands complain about their wives nagging? It's not rocket science. It's actually pretty simple. Here's why. Because the husband is the priest of the home. Because we're the priest of the home. When you're nagging us, you're out of fellowship with God because that's sin. So we complain because we want you to get back in relationship to God because we care about your spiritual condition. That's why we do it. Yeah, yeah. You're like, you ain't buying that one, are you? That's, yeah. I've not had one lady ever agree that assessment.
I gotta go.
Yeah. What's,
Really whisper to me, you don't nag. And he said, but I do complain.
well,
What does that mean?
I have no idea. We're going to keep going on leadership here. Come to the marriage seminar. We'll address it there. How about that? Now, here's how it works. Luella's nagging. I'm complaining. Lord looks at me and says, what are you doing? Well, I'm sick and tired of Luella's nagging. I would be too if I were you. I asked, what are you doing? Well, I'm trying to get her to stop. I thought it was my job to convict her of sin. I'm just trying to help you out then. I mean, what are you going to tell him at that point, right? And he said, well, I don't need your help. And my frustration, I said, fine, what do you want me to do? I'm tired of nagging. Listen to how I word this. Rick, what you fail to understand is this. Underneath Luella's fallen behavior, nagging, is the pain of an unmet need for attention from you. Now, my hunch is, son, if you quit complaining and you spent more time meeting the need for attention, what you'd actually notice is the nagging would go away. This isn't rocket science. You just have to care to meet the need. But I don't want to meet the need. I just want you to stop it. Even in the workplace, some people act out because they don't feel appreciated. They don't feel accepted. A good leader looks beyond the behavior to determine the what? The need. Now, your employer is not a therapist, but a good leader understands you have to care about this. Remember I told you my brother is a level 5 leader? He has this thing with me. If he's got an employee that people want to get rid of, he'll meet with them, and then he'll send them to me and salvage them. So there was a guy in Arizona, since Don had to do a lot of work in Arizona, though he lives in Atlanta, To manager A and B wanted this one guy fired. His name was Tom. Tom had stayed home from work and was working from home one day. Manager A and B are on a phone line with this guy, and they hear him snoring. It was the final straw. The team that he was on hated him and wanted him gone. They couldn't stand him. He burned a lot of bridges over 5 years. And on this particular day when that happened, they went to Don. We want him gone. We want him fired. Don goes, give it a week. Think it through. Come back to me. They came back and they said, we want him gone. But manager B said, Don, we need to get rid of him, but let's give him 2 months severance because I think we should just do that to help him out. Don goes, I like that. That's compassionate. Me and Don advocate for what we call compassionate leadership models. So Don said to him, before you fire him, I want to meet with him. And Don brought him in, and he said, Rick, he's sitting there with an attitude. Just an attitude, waiting to get fired. And he starts talking to the guy, and he goes, told him what happened, fell asleep. He goes, I'm on medication, okay, Don? I'm on medication. I've been diagnosed with bipolar. They put me on this medicine, it makes me sleep. He was in that tone and attitude. And Don goes, I'm not a psychiatrist, so I can't speak to that. I don't think you have bipolar disorder. I think you're an angry man. And something has happened in your life that has made you so angry that some doctor interprets it as medical, but it isn't. He goes, you want to know what it is? You want to know? He goes, I'd love to know. And he started breaking down, crying. He goes, 5 years ago, my wife cheated on me, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to save it, and she divorced me. And now I'm a single dad. I don't know what to do, so I start drinking. I become an alcoholic. And he's crying and sobbing in Don's office. And he goes, I got sober a year ago, but I don't know what to do with the anger anymore, Don. And Don went over and gave him a hug. He said, now I understand. And he calmed down. He said, what happened in my office today was going to dictate your future. I actually have a need for a programmer. You have lost your job with the team. That's the consequences of your actions. But I need a programmer who will work directly for me. You're going to work for me if you want it. Everything stays the same, salary and benefits. Nothing changes. But you're going to leave here. You're going to talk to Tim. And if you go to Tim, he knows I'm keeping you. But here's what's going to happen. You are going to come to work. You can no longer work from home. You can do what you want about this medicine issue. But yours is pain and hurt. He said, you will work from the building. You no longer work from home. And when you come into work, I don't care if you have to fake it. You're going to smile. And Don and I work from the Latewell model. He goes, and you will treat people with goodwill, and you will be respectful. Do you understand? Yeah, Don. And you're going to do one other thing. He said, what's that? You're going to contact Don, hands on my phone number. You're going to contact Dr. Rick Marks. He says, who's that? He goes, he's my brother. He's a psychologist and a counselor. You're going to meet with him, and whatever he says do, you're going to do. Do you understand? Yes, Don. So the guy called me the next day. I spent 4 hours on the phone with him. He failed his wife because he was a bad husband, and she found someone else to feel the pain, to meet the need that he was feeling. I said, you're going to call your wife, and you're going to ask her to forgive you for failing her. That's what you're going to do. You failed her. You're going to own up to that. I said, are you involved in a church anywhere? Well, I just started going, good. Go talk to that pastor and talk to him about your faith, and then see if they have a Christian counselor someone you can talk to locally. Oh, and by the way, you're going to do these other things too. You have until Friday at 6 o'clock to call me and tell me you've done them. Because I will let my brother know. He did it. That was like 7 years ago. He's a different man to this day. Because a leader took the time to listen for this. And when my brother was third from the top at SunTrust, one of his bosses, second level, said, your brother's the only person we know that turns people around that the rest will just throw away and get rid of. That's emotional intelligence. That's a leader that cares enough to find out the why. Does that make sense? He had a guy that was at the highest level of computer banking stuff in a particular area of banking. They spent tens of thousands on this guy's abilities, and his performance started dropping. So much so, Don had to call him in and talk to him about it. And he's giving all these reasons, excuses, and Don said to him, just out of nowhere, he goes, if you weren't working here, what would you be doing? He said, what? He goes, if you weren't working here and money was an option, what would you be doing? Don goes, he sat up and goes, you really want to know, Don? He goes, yeah. I go, I'd have my band, and my band, we'd be playing all over the North Georgia area. I'd be doing music full time. He said, really? What kind of music? And Don had him talk about the music. Dopamine went up. He's talking about himself. And Don goes, why aren't you doing it? And he had all these reasons. Don goes, 2 hours later, I had a 5-year plan designed for him to quit working at SunTrust and be full-time in his job. He finished it in 4. But guess what Don had for 4 years? A highly motivated, good attitude employee. Don goes, I can still pay for another one of him, but my goal is not to have him work for us. My goal as leader is to help him become the best him. And if that's what he needs to be, then it's my job as leader to help him become the best him, because that's his calling. That's his passion. Computer is what he does to survive. And that guy's still out there playing music to this day. All because a manager, a leader, brought him in and wanted to find out the why. That makes sense? You'll have folks in your church who are acting out. You can yell and scream, blame or judge, all this all you want. But what if you took the time to find out the why? It's usually linked to something here. I don't feel accepted. I don't feel respected. I don't feel loved. I feel insecure. It's linked back to these 10 needs. And once you get here, once you figure out the need, then you can meet the need in a healthy way, not a rat poison way. Got it? And that's what good leaders do. Matter of fact, it's not just leadership. This is what you do to connect to anybody. This is how you connect and bond to anybody God designed it to be. Does that make sense? But we don't care about the reason why. We just want you to stop it, Doyle. Why? Because whatever you're doing is bothering me. Stop it, suck it up, get over it, or we Christianize it. Trust Jesus. Just pray about it. What you're really saying is, I don't care. Which goes against the violations of one of my top 4s. HRAG. Never send the message, I don't care. You care when you can identify the need and you care about this. Now, this little graphic right here, this thing right here, you see at the bottom? I made this a part of my soul. And when I learned this 25 years ago, I had an opportunity to practice it. It was in the shape of a phone call, form of a phone call. I picked up the phone, and this is what I heard. Can we talk? It was in that tone. It was Luella. I actually thought, no. But I was, right after when I really had that comfort, I thought, sure. And she starts complaining about me not making the bed. I hate making beds. I will make a bed better than her any day. I can still do it. I did it in the military. There are no wrinkles underneath the mattress. The sheets had to be equidistant on both sides, hospital corners. She cheats. She uses fitted mattresses that go around. Oh, that's a wimpy way to do it. Get underneath there, make it straight with you got it? I know how to make a bed.
Can you bounce
Got
the
out.
floor off of it?
Oh, you ain't kidding. I know how to do it. And I could replicate it if I wanted to. I just think it's a waste of time to make a bed since you're going to mess it up later. I'm staying at Kelly's house, so I just kind of throw the comforter up there. But it's not made underneath that, all right? Just in case he wants to walk in there, he go, well, he did something. I hate making beds. But on this particular day, 25 years ago, I wasn't listening to her complaining. I was listening for the what? The need. And I said, Luella, stop. She went out, stop a minute. I said, if I made the bed, would you feel supported? Yes, Rick. You can call her and ask her. 904-721-7527 is my home number. I still have a landline. All these years later, 95% of the time when I am home, I make the bed. Not because I like making beds, because I don't. So I like traveling, I have to make a bed. But when I am home, 95% of the time I make the bed. Why? Because when I make the bed, the woman that I love feels supported. And when she feels supported, that's good for who?
You. Both of you.
Good for us. Everything I do is in the us context. Now, I said 95% of the time because I don't like making beds. There are times I get out of bed before her, so she has to make it because I don't want to. That make sense? Yeah. Not too long ago, I got out of bed because I didn't want to make it, and she rolled out at the same time.
Oh, what a dilemma.
It was. It was. She knew. She saw it on my face. She goes, I'll make it. I went, yes! Because she knows I don't like making it. That makes sense? Yeah. There's no attitude. I just do it. Why? Because I love her and I want her to feel supported, and that's good for the marriage. You see, everything humans do is motivated by something. Nothing happens in a vacuum. A good leader, a good person who thinks about relationship, always listen for the need. Listen for the need. Listen for the need. And once you identify what the need is, meet the need in a way that doesn't harm themselves or others. No rat poison ways. Make sense? Questions or comments about this? What are you realizing? Yeah. Now, we don't have the time to do it, but let me tell you what I gave you in your handout here. So, go to the back on page, where is it? Page 20. I actually put Dr. Ferguson's CARES assessment tool in here for you. It's on a Likert scale from -2 to +2, all right? So then, the key is, if you choose to take this, and I encourage you strongly to do it, do not read into the items. They only mean what they mean, all right? So it's important that people receive me for who I am, even if I'm a little different. Strongly disagree, to strongly agree. So answer that as it relates to you. Don't read into the items. Then, if you notice over here on page 23, you'll see the scoring sheet. You'll see the scoring sheet. Now, you'll notice the 10 relational needs are listed there, all right? But under each one, there are 5 numbers. The numbers, those 5 numbers underneath comfort, 10, 26, 28, 46, and 49, are the items in the instrument that relate to that need. So if you scored a -2 for question 10, just put a -2. So transfer your scores from the test over here. Got that? Just put them over here, and then you're going to total each one up. Now, when you total them, you'll know your top 3 needs and your bottom 3 needs. So here's how it works. Let me give you an example. This is Rick, and this is Luella. My top 3 needs are these: respect, affection, and appreciation. Luella's top 3 are encouragement, security, and support. And then you have your bottom 3. Matter of fact, my bottom 3 are her top 3. Her bottom 3 are my top 3. There is no right or wrong to this. Humans are just different. It just so happens affection is her bottom need. Now, Ferguson refers to these as priority needs. And what he means by that is all humans biologically have all 10 of those needs. These needs, by the way, are in the right side of your brain, known as the limbic system, all right? When the Bible talks about the heart, it's actually referring biologically to your thalamus. The thalamus is the very center of the brain where all human experience emotions go to. They're stored there, all right? If the brain has too much pain in it, then the thalamus and the other parts of the brain will dump that energy into the cerebellum. In the cerebellum, if it has too much pain in it, this is where suicide, homicide, spiritual oppression, all of that develops from. But the cerebellum is linked very close to your spinal cord, which means all that negative energy then goes in your spinal cord, which goes straight down your back. And what's in your spinal cord? Nerve endings, which go through your whole body. And this is why you know through 40 years of medical journals, the more angry, resentful, bitter you are, the higher risk you are for heart attack and strokes. The more fearful and insecure you are, the higher risk you are for abdominal problems. Because the energy of fear is stored here. The energy of anger is here. What do you think a hardened heart is? It's a brain that won't feel anymore. It wants its way, but it's a hard feeling. And it will lead to your death. My dad died from a major heart attack, age 47. But it was his anger that actually killed him. He never got past it. And it led to an early death. It's the mind-body connection that the Lord gives us. So then, these three are where I feel most loved. I call it the biggest dopamine shot, right? If I feel respected and appreciated and I get affection, dopamine. If I hold Luella's hand, it means nothing. She holds my hand, I get aroused. Got it? Now, support is my bottom one. I grew up as a latchkey kid in the 70s. I would walk home from school, elementary school. I'd go to the backyard and get the key, come in the house, and I was by myself for 2 or 3 hours. I was a latchkey kid. I learned not to depend on people, support yourself. Luella had no support, and her brain is looking for it. My brain's not. So when we got married, she said, make the bed. I wouldn't do it. Why? Make it yourself. I need you to fix the light bulb. You can fix the light bulb. I would fix it. You can fix it. Because support's low for me. What I realized was, when I got wind of this like 25 years ago, I went, oh, when I fix the light bulb, she feels what? Love. Supported, because she feels loved, right? When you meet a need, you feel loved. If I hold my hands, I'm anything. But what she figured out is, I have to be intentional in being affectionate. And she actually, we were mentoring some couples a long time ago, and she said, I never fully grasped, but the same emotions and feelings that Rick has when I hold his hand are the same ones I get when he changes the light bulb. Because our needs are different. Our needs are different. Make sense? For some, it's respect. For some, it's appreciation. So then, here's what you do is identify your top 3 needs. Get self-awareness. Because that's where you feel most loved. But here's the other kicker. Because it's where you feel most loved, it's also going to be the place where you feel most unloved. That is where you're going to be most triggered into defensiveness. My biggest conflict with people, if my brain senses I'm about to be disrespected, it is hypervigilant. Hypervigilant. I really have to regulate that part of me. Because even if you're not about to disrespect me, David, my brain feels it's about to disrespect me. It's on a defensive posture. I have to talk that part of my brain down, like, tone it down, Rick, tone it down. You don't know. You don't know yet. I learned to self-regulate. Got it? Self-awareness leads to self-control. But we're triggered into defensive around these. Make sense? Now, just so you know, by the way, a lot of people like the 5 love languages. I'm not a fan of it myself. I'm not saying don't read it and don't embrace it. It's not for me. Here's why. It has to do with biology. The 5 love languages are an author's metaphors for how he conceptualized people love. The problem is in the marketing of the book. It's known as the 5 love languages. If these are the 5 love languages, then nobody knew how to love until somebody wrote the book about it. Throughout world history, nobody knew how to love well. And now we got a book to tell us. The problem is they're just metaphors conceptualized by Gary Chapman, which I don't have a problem with. The problem is it doesn't fit with biology. There are 10 biological relational needs hardwired in your brain. The 5 love languages only cover 5 of the 10. If your love language is physical touch, that means you have a higher need for affection. If your love language is quality time, you have a higher need for attention. If your love language is acts of service, you have a higher need for support. It doesn't cover the other ones. I want people to think of biology. Why? Because I don't care if you're African, Slavic, South American, American Indian, all human brains work the same, don't they? Since God designed all brains to work the same, that means we all have the same what? Needs relationally. Meet the need. Don't think in love language. Meet the need that's in front of you. They feel discouraged right now. Encourage them. They're feeling unsupported. Then support them. Galatians 6:2. Bear the burden with them. Why? So they're not walking life what? Alone. You got it. It's all about aloneness. All about aloneness. We're not meant to live life alone. And yet, sadly, so many Americans do. And so many Christians do.
So when we do this,
Mhm.
add them up, is the higher number or the lower number our top needs?
Higher number.
The higher number or top needs?
Lower numbers, these lower ones down here, you have them biologically, your brain just doesn't think about them much. Now, it doesn't mean something could happen and it may raise itself, but it'll probably go back down. Now, Ferguson says 1 to 2 of these top 3 come from your childhood.
I was gonna say, is it your childhood, how you?
1 or 2 of these come from your childhood, and if you kept taking the test over and over, like every once 9, 10 months, you'd actually see that 1 or 2 would actually stay pretty elevated. Respect and affection. That poison behavior, going to sin no more. But he knew she needed acceptance and security, so he put those guys in their place. They dropped their stones and walk away. She's like, oh, I'm feeling safe with this guy. And then she knows that she needs acceptance because she's been caught in the act of adultery and she needs approval. Woman, where are those that condemn you? Felt no condemnation from the guy in front of her, Jesus. She says, there is no one. He goes, I don't condemn you either. Words of acceptance and words of approval. Don't you know, she felt. And when the low brain toggles off, high brain toggles on. And he spoke right to it and said, go sin no more. Make better decisions. The only group he spoke truth to without meeting a need were the Pharisees. Why? Because they weren't operating out of pain. They are operating out of arrogance.
And he knew they weren't teachable,
Oh, very much so. So he just spoke to them as they were.
because they were rule.
But you never see him doing this. It's always need truth, need truth, need truth. That make sense? It's okay for people to be needy. That just means you're human. Get used to it. To admit you're human is a good thing. Questions or comments about this? Anyone?
I think you can grow up in a home, though, where the girls' needs aren't met, and they're taught to be like the boys.
Was that?
I think you can grow up in a home
Mm-hmm.
where, especially if you're the first daughter in the group, you were taught to act like your brother, and you're taught to suck it up.
Sure.
Because I was, I can say that right now.
Yeah. And you'll take that message as I'm not allowed to hurt.
And my mother always told me I was more like my father than the 3 boys were.
Yeah.
One thing I would strongly recommend is you would please take this assessment. If you would share it with me, I would appreciate it. It would help me as we move forward to know how you may need things or appreciate things or whatever. If you're not sharing it or texting that to me, because as we move forward with the deacon, one of the things we want to do with people that are under us is understand how they need encouragement or how they need their needs met. So as we as a church can fully meet that need.
Some work teams have, I've done work for like the metal treating industry and some others. They take the assessment among their core leadership team and they take it and they share their needs with each other so that they can minister to each other's needs as a work team. So if me and Doyle and Brian and Nelson are on a team and I know that his top 3 are this and then I can be aware that, okay, I know one of his needs is encouragement. I can be encouraging, but his is not. He careless about encouragement. It's light low for him, but his is appreciation. So I know that I can be more appreciative for him, right? And his is, he may feel that he doesn't get a lot of approval. So I always speak words of approval to him. Why? Why wouldn't I? I want you to thrive, and I want to bless you. And here's how it works. All this comes from the Father through me to you. It's to one another's.
For one another.
That's how he does it. He meets the needs through people. Got it? He does it through people. It's to one another's. Because that's how he does it. It's God with skin on. You get to be God with skin on to others. Think about people who struggle with drugs and stuff. All that is a person trying to deaden the pain of unmet needs through their addictions. It's medicating. It's just a rat poison way of dealing with things. That's all it is. And do they destroy their lives? Sure, many do. Suicide is pain and pleasure, by the way. For some people, what age group has the highest suicide rate? encourages them? Who supports them? Where do they get acceptance from or affection from? And if those needs are not met, you are in pain, deeply alone. And for some people, the pain of that aloneness is so great, the brain goes, it'll be more pleasurable to be dead than to stay in this pain of disconnection. And they kill themselves.
How do you meet their physical needs?
Food, air, water, shelter?
How do you meet their physical needs if they're not in a nursing home, if you can't physically take care of them?
Well, I'm not saying you don't put them in a nursing home. But many are put there and nobody visits them. Nobody cares about them. And that's why. Why? Many years ago, I was doing a marriage seminar for 3 Free Will Baptist churches. I told them I was predestined to be there. They took the joke, all right? So, and I was talking about this, and a man in the middle of the room, there's about 100 in the room, kind of got angry with me. And he said to me, "Are you suggesting I didn't love my kids? Is that what you're suggesting?" He said, "Let me tell you something. My kids always had food on a table, roof over their head, clothes on their back. Don't suggest I don't love my children." Well, I live by goodwill, respect, humility, empathy, so I never give people input without permission because it's disrespectful to give people input into their life without permission. Always ask permission first. So I said, "May I share a thought about that, sir?" He said, "Yes." I said, "What I'm about to say, I mean with all due respect." He said, "All right." I said, "Anybody can do what you just said. Medicare and Medicaid does it for millions of kids every single day. So what? That's about money. You can give me that money. I can do what you just did. Anybody can do that. The government does it all the time. A daddy gives his heart away. You give your heart away. But anybody can do food, water, shelter. So what? Kids need food, air, water, shelter. All humans do. That's physical survival. But you also have bonding needs that must be met as well. And we're all longing for that. The question is, are you as a leader willing to come alongside and bear a burden to encourage and support? Because Jesus would. And he's asking us to do that for others on his behalf. It's the great commandment. Love God and your neighbor as you love yourself. Does that make sense? My father-in-law killed himself 6 years ago, 74 years old. Never got along well. He was an honest man, but didn't relate well. Even shut my wife off for 6 years. No relationship. Didn't talk because she voted for Bush. Just shut her. I lost respect for him that day. I thought, you're going to shut off a relationship. The only daughter you have that's healthy and mature, and you're going to throw her away just because of that? I knew who he was. Now he's in his 70s, mid-70s, and his health is so bad, he has to come live with us or somebody else. Well, Getson Columbus Fowler always lived life under his terms, his way.
Oh my goodness.
And he had this little cinder block house there in High Springs, Florida. He was a Florida cracker, redneck. And I know I did it because in his mind, I have to leave my house. I ain't leaving my house. And the pain of his ability to take care of himself and be at home by himself, because he knew it was going to come to an end, the pain of having to leave his way of living was too great. So if I can't live the way I want to live, I'll die by my hands. And that's what he did. It was a rat poison way of solving a problem. Pain pursues what? But the damage it caused was far greater. Does that make sense? I don't agree with what people do, but I seek to understand why. Then that creates the compassion. And then I'll operate from compassion. Why did the woman get caught in adultery? Maybe she was sexually abused and that was the only way she knew to find love. Maybe she was homeless and had kids and that was how she was making money to survive. It doesn't make what she did right, but it does make it understandable why desperate people do desperate things. When you understand the why, that allows you to have compassion for that person. But you still give them truth and direction in a loving way. That makes sense? And in leadership, that's the kind of leaders you want to be in the church. Because people want to sin, right? Okay, so what? I sin. Who cares? What matters is how I deal with it. Questions or comments about any of this? What are you realizing and becoming aware of then? Ah. Has this been helpful?
Yes.
Different way of thinking, huh?